Alright, Karina baby, today is 6/29. It's June the 29th. You're going to hear the doggies in the background barking. That's Abby and Sherpa. They see a black bear, mama black bear with 3 cubs. So, let's go to the 29th and see what today's tale is. A tall story. Look how tall he is. See him in his green pants? A tall story. This is a story about a man called Mr. Short who was very tall. Mr. Short has legs as long as telephone poles, and his head was always in the clouds. It wasn't easy being as tall as Mr. Short. He was lonely because he had nobody his own size to talk to. And to make matters worse, children made fun of his name. "Silly old Shorty, long legs," they sang. "Silly old Shorty, long legs." One windy afternoon, Mr. Short went for a walk. The wind was blowing the clouds around like crazy that day. Suddenly something flew right past his nose. It was a kite. The kite tossed and tugged at its string until it got away and tangled itself on a tower. Mr. Short looked down. Way below him, the children were pointing to the kite and crying because they couldn't get it down. Mr. Short was so tall, the top of the towel only came up to his chin. "I'll help you," he said. So Mr. Short took 2 steps on his legs as long as telephone poles and unhooked the kite. Easy as winking. The children were very happy. They thanked Mr. Short for helping them and were never unkind to him again. The last week, Mr. Short got a job. The perfect job for a tall man like Mr. Short. Can you guess what it is? He got a job as a window cleaner. The only window cleaner in the world who doesn't need a ladder. He made lots of friends and was not lonely ever again. Which is a nice way to end a tall story, isn't it? So there's a tall tale about a tall man named Mr. Short. That was a tall story. The Princess and the Pea. Look at that princess. All those beds leading down to her bed. The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince. He wanted a princess, but he should have to be a real princess. But she would have to be a real princess. He traveled all around the world to find one. But always there was something wrong. There were princesses enough, but he found it difficult to make out whether they were real ones. So he came home again and was very sad, for he would have liked to have a real princess. One evening, a terrible storm came on. It thundered and lightning, and the rain poured down in torrents. It was dreadful. Suddenly a knocking was heard at the gate, and the old king went to open it. It was a princess standing out there before the gate. But what a sight she was after all the rain and the dreadful weather. The water ran down from her hair and her clothes. It ran down into her toes of her shoes and out again at the heels. And yet she said that she was a real princess. Yes, we'll soon find that out, thought the old queen. But she said nothing, went into the bedroom, took all the bedding off, and the bedstead, and laid a pea at the bottom Then she took 20 mattresses and laid them on the pea, and then 20 eider-down beds on top of the mattress. On this the princess was to lay all night, and in the morning she was asked how she had slept. "Oh, terribly badly," said the princess. "I have scantly shut my eyes the whole night. Heaven only knows what was in that bed, but I was lying on something hard, so that I am black and blue all over." Now they knew that she was a real princess because she had felt the pea right through eider-down beds. Nobody but a real princess could be so sensitive as that. So the prince took her for his wife, for now he knew that he had a real princess, and the pea was put in the art museum, where it may still be seen if no one has stolen it. That is a real story. So the Princess and the Pea. I thought that the Princess and the Pea, I read this one story where she just kept calling in for more mattresses. She was like, "I need another mattress. I feel something still." And then the nurse has to come in and give her another mattress. But that's the Princess and the Pea. Let's do the next one. Why not? The Brave Little Tailor. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting at the bench near the window, working cheerfully with all his might, when an old woman came down the street. She was crying, "Good jolly to sell, good jolly to sell." The cry sounded pleasant in a little tailor's ears, but he put his head out the window and called out, "Here, my good woman, come here if you want a customer." So the poor woman climbed the steps with her heavy basket and was obliged to unpack and display all of her pots to the tailor. He looked at every one of them and lifted all the lids, applied his nose to each. At last he said, "The jolly seems pretty good. You may weigh me out 4 half-ounces, or I don't mind having 1/4 pound." The woman, who had expressed to find a good customer, gave him what he asked, for but what off angry and grumbling. The woman, who had expressed to find a good customer, gave him what he asked for, but went off angry and grumbling. "This jolly is the very thing for me," cried the little tailor. "It will give me strength and cunning." And he took down the bread from the cupboard, cut a big slice off the loaf, and spread the jelly on it, laid it near him, and went on sketching more gallantly than ever. All the while a scent of the sweet jelly was spreading through the room, where there were quantities of flies. They were attracted by it and flew down to eat of it. "Now then, who invited you here?" said the tailor, and drove the on-biting guest away. But the flies, not understanding his language, were not to be got rid of like that, and returned in larger numbers than before. Then the tailor, unable to stand it any longer, took from his chimney corner a ragged cloth. "Now I'll let you have it," he said, and beat it among them unmercifully. When he ceased and counted the slain, he found 7 lying dead before him. "This is indeed somewhat," he said, wondering at his own bravery. "The whole town shall know about this." So he hastened to cut out the belt, and he stitched it and put it in a large capitals, 7 at one blow. "The town, did I say? said the little tailor, "the whole world shall know it." And his heart quivered with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor fastened the belt round him, and he began to think of going out into the world, for his workship seemed too small for his valor. So he looked about in all the houses for something that would be useful to take with him, but he found nothing but an old cheese. When he put it in his pocket outside the door, he noticed that a bird had got caught in the branches, so he took it and put it in his pocket with the cheese. Then he set out gallantly on his way, and as he was light and active, he felt no fatigue. The way led over a mountain, and when he reached the topmost peak, he said a terrible giant sitting there, and looked about him as he at his ease. The tailor went bravely up to him, called out to him, and said, "Good day, comrade. There you sit, looking over the wide world. I am on the way thither to seek my fortune. Have you a fancy to go with me?" The giant looked at the tailor conspicuously and said, "You, vagabond? You miserable little creature?" "That may be," answered the little tailor. And undoing his coat, he showed the giant his belt. "You can read there whether I am a man or not." The giant read 7 in one blow, and thinking it meant men that the tailor had killed, he at once felt more respect for the little fellow, but he wanted to test him. He took a stone, and seizing it so hard that water came out of it. "Now, can you do that?" said the giant. "That is, if you have the strength for it." "That's not much," said the tailor. "I call the play." And he put his hands in his pocket and took out the cheese and squeezed it till the whey ran out of it. "Well," said he, "what do you think of that?" The giant did not know what to say to it, for he could not have believed it of the little man. That the giant took up a stone and threw it so hard that it was nearly out of sight. "Now, little fellow, suppose you do that." "Well thrown," said the tailor, "but the stone fell back to the earth." "I will throw you one, and you will never come back." So he felt in his pocket and took out the bird, and threw it into the air, and the bird, when it found itself at liberty, took wing, flew off, and returned no more. "What do you think of that, comrade?" asked the tailor. "There is no doubt that you can throw," said the giant. "Now we will see if you can carry." He led the little tailor to a mighty oak tree, which had been filled and was lying on the ground, and said, "Now, if you are strong enough, help me to carry this tree out of the wood." "Willingly," answered the little man. "You take the trunk of the shoulders, and I will take the branches with all their foliage. That is by far the biggest end." So the giant took the trunk on his shoulders, and the tailor seated himself on the branch, and the giant, who could not see what he was doing, had the whole tree to carry, and the little man on it as well. And the little man was very cheerful and merry, and whistled the tune, "There were 3 tailors riding by," as if the tree were mere child's play. The giant, when he had struggled on under his heavy load a part of the way, he tried out and cried, "Look here, I must let go of the tree." The tailor jumped off quickly. Then, taking hold of the tree with both arms, as if he were carrying it, he said to the giant, "You see, you can't carry the tree, though you are such a big fellow." They went on together a little further, and presently they came to a cherry tree, and the giant took hold of the treetop branches where the russet fruit hung, and pulled them downward, gave them to the tailor to hold, bidding him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and as the giant let go, the tree sprung back and the tailor was thrown up into the air. And when he dropped down again without any damage, the giant said to him, "How is this? Haven't you strength enough to hold such a weak spring as that?" "It is not strength that is lacking," answered the little tailor. "How should it to one who has slain 7 in one blow?" "I just jumped over the tree because the hunters are shooting down there in the bushes. Why don't you jump it too?" The giant made the attempt, and not being able to valiant the tree, he remained hanging in the branches, so that once more the little tailor got the better of him. Then said the giant, "As you are such a gallant fellow, suppose you come with me to our den and stay the night." The tailor was quite willing and followed him. When they reached the den, they sat some other giants by the fire, and all gladly welcomed him. The little tailor looked round and thought, "There is more elbow room here than in my workshop." The giant showed him a bed and told him he had better lay down on it and go to sleep. The bed, however, was too big for the tailor, and he did not stay in it, but crept into the corner to sleep. As soon as it was midnight, the giant got up, took a great staff of iron, and beat the bed through with one strike. And suppose he had made an end of the grasshopper of the tailor. Very early in the morning the giant went into the wood and forgot all about the little tailor, and when they saw him coming after them alive and merry, they were terribly frightened, and thinking he was going to kill them, and ran away in all haste. So the little tailor marched on, always following his nose, and after he had gone a great way, he entered the courtyard belonging to the king's palace, and there he felt so overpowered with fatigue that he lay down and fell asleep. In the meanwhile came various people, who looked at him very curiously and read his belt. 7 in one blow. "Oh," said they, "why should this great lord come here in time of peace? What a mighty champion he must be." Then they went and told the king about him. They thought that if war should break out, what a worthy and useful man he would be, and he ought not be allowed to depart at any price. The king then summoned his council and sent one of his countries to the little tailor to beg him, as soon as he should wake up, to consent to serve in the king's army. So the messenger stood and went at the sleeper's side until he began to stretch his limbs and open his eyes. And then he carried his answer back. "That was the reason for which I came," the little tailor said. "I am ready to enter the king's service." So he was received into the very honorable, and a separate dwelling was set apart for him. But the rest of the soldiers were very much set against the little tailor, and they wished him 1,000 miles away. "What shall be done about it?" they said among themselves. "If we pick a quarrel and fight with him, the 7 of us will fall at each blow, and will be of no good to us. So they came to a resolution and went all together to the king to ask for their discharge. "We never intended," said they, "to serve with a man who kills 7 at a blow." The king felt sorry to lose all of his faithful servants because of one man. He wished that he had never seen him, and would willingly get rid of him if he might. But he did not dare to dismiss the little tailor, for fear he should kill all the king's people and place himself upon the throne. He thought a long while about it, and at last made up his mind of what to do. He sent for the little tailor and told him that as he was so great a warrior, he had a proposal to make to him. He told him that in the wood in his dominions dwelt 2 giants who had great damage by robbery, murder, and fire, and that no man dared to go near them for fear of his life, but that if the tailor should overcome and slay both the giants, the king should give him his only daughter in marriage, and half his kingdom as dowry, and that 100 horsemen should have with him to give him assistance, and would be a fine thing for a man like me, thought the little tailor, a beautiful princess and half of a kingdom, and not to be had, and that is not to be had every day. So he said to the king, "Oh yes, I can soon overcome the giants, and yet I have no need of the 100 horsemen. He who can kill 7 in one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. So the little tailor set out, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he saw to the border of the wood, he said to his escort, "Stay here while I go and attack the giants." Then he sprung into the wood and looked about him right and left. After a while he caught sight of the 2 giants. They were lying down under the tree asleep and snoring, so that all the branches shook. The little tailor, all alert, filled both his pockets with stones and climbed up into the tree, and made his way to an overhanging bough, so that he could see himself just above the sleepers. And from there he let one stone after another fall on the chest of one of the giants. For a long time the giant was quite unaware of this, but at last he woke up and pushed his comrade and said, "What are you hitting me for?" "Are you dreaming?" said the other. "I am not touching you." As they composed themselves again to sleep, and the tailor let fall a stone on the other giant, "What can that be?" he cried. "What are you casting at me?" "I am casting nothing at you," answered the first, grumbling. They disputed about it for a while, but they were tired. They gave it up at last, and their eyes closed once more. Then the little tailor began his game anew. He picked up a heavier stone and threw it down with force upon the first giant's chest. "That is too much," cried he, and sprang up like a madman and struck his comrade such a blow that the tree shook about them, and the other paid him back with a ready coin. And they fought with such fury that they tore up trees by their roots to use for weapons against each other, so that at last both of them lay dead upon the ground. And now the little tailor got down. "What a lucky thing," he said, "that the tree I was sitting in did not get torn up too, or else I should have had to jump from one tree to another." Then he drew his sword and gave each of the giants a few hacks in the breast, and went back to the horseman and said, The deed is done. I have made an end to both of them, though it went hard with me. In the struggle, the rooted up trees to defend themselves, But it was of no use. They had to do with a man who could kill 7 at one blow. Then are you not wounded? Asked the horseman. Nothing of the sort, answered the tailor. They have not injured a hare. The horseman still would not believe it, and rode into the wood to see, and there they found the giants wallowing in their blood, and all about them laying the uprooted trees. The little tailor has claimed the promised boon, but the king repented of his offer, and again sought how to rid himself of the hero. Before you can possess my daughter and the half of my kingdom, said he to the tailor, you must perform another heroic act. In the wood lives a unicorn who does great damage. You must capture him. The unicorn does not strike more terror into me than 2 giants. 7 at one blow. That is my way, was the tailor's answer. So, taking a rope and an axe with him, he went out into the wood and told those who were ordered to attend him to wait outside. He had not far to seek. The unicorn soon came out and sprung at him, as if he would make an end of him without delay. Softly, softly, said the tailor, most haste, worse speed, and he remained standing until the animal came quite near. Then he slipped quickly behind a tree. The unicorn ran with all its might against the tree and struck his horn so deep into the trunk that he could not get it out again, and so was captured. Now I have you, said the tailor, coming out from behind the tree and putting the rope around the unicorn's neck. He took the axe and cut free the horn, and when all his party was assembled, he brought the animal to the king. The king did not yet wish to give him the promised reward, and set him a third task to do. Before the wedding could take place, the tailor was to secure a wild boar, which had done a great deal of damage in the wood. The huntsmen were to accompany him and help him. All right, said the tailor, this is child's play. But he did not take the huntsmen into the wood, and they were all the better pleased, for the wild boar had many a time before received them in such a way that they had no fancy to disturb him. When the boar caught sight of the tailor, he ran at him with a foaming mouth and glaring tusks to bore him into the ground. But the nimble hero rushed into the chapel, which chanced to be near, and jumped quickly out the window on the other side. The boar ran after him, and when he got inside, the tailor shut the door after him, and there he was imprisoned, for the capture was too big and on wildly to jump out the window too. Then the tailor called the huntsmen, and they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. And then he betook himself to the king, who now, whether he liked it or not, was obliged to fulfill his promise and give him his daughter and the half of his kingdom. But if he had known that the great warrior was only a little tailor, he would have taken is still more to heart. But if he had known that the great warrior was only a little tailor, he have taken it still more to heart. So the wedding was celebrated with great splendor and little joy, and the tailor was made into a king. One night the young queen heard her husband talking in his sleep and saying, "Boy, make me a waistcoat and punch me those breeches, or I will whip my yardstick about your shoulder, or I will wrap my yardstick about your shoulders." And so she perceived of what low birth her husband was. She went to her father the next morning and told him all, and begged him to set her free from the man who was nothing better than a tailor. The king bribed her, be comforted, saying, "Tonight have your bedroom door open. My guard shall stand outside, and when he is asleep, they shall come in and bind him and carry him off to a ship that will take him to the other side of the world." So the wife felt consoled by the king's water barrier, who had been listening all the while, went to the little tailor and disclosed to him the whole plan. "I shall put a stop to all of this," said he. At night he lay down as usual in bed, and when his wife thought he was asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who was believed to be asleep, began to murmur plainly, "Boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will whip my yardstick about your shoulders. I have slain 7 at one blow, killed 2 giants, caught a unicorn, and taken a wild boar. And shall I be afraid of those who are standing outside of my room door?" And when they heard the tailor say this, a great fear seized the guards, and they fled away as if they had been wild hares, and none of them would venture to attack him. And so the little tailor and all his lifetime remained a king. So, what did we learn? Some people can outwit other people, right? So, this little tailor outwitted every situation that he was in. He is very, very smart. He worked his way around and set out new angles to make himself a king, right? Alright, so let's do the next one. Actually, let's do Aesop's Fables. The Tortoise and the Hare. The Tortoise and the Hare. A conceited hare boasted about her speed to everyone who would listen. "Not even the north wind is as fast as I am," she declared. "No animal in the forest could beat me in a race." Now a tortoise nearby grew tired of such bragging. "We've all heard you talk, but we've never seen you run," she said. "Why don't you race with me, and then we'll see who is the fastest." The hare bursted out laughing. "I could beat you standing still," she explained. But she agreed that they would race to the oak tree around the bend in the road. In an instant they were off, and the hare soon was out of sight. The tortoise pleading step by patient step. I practically won already," thought the hare, as she dashed around the bend in the road. "I should stretch out here and take a little rest, and still beat the tortoise by a mile." And she settled down by the side of the road. She planned to jump up and finish the race in a minute. So she saw the tortoise. The minute she saw the tortoise. But the grass was so soft and the sun was so warm that before the hare realized it, she had fallen fast asleep. Meanwhile, the tortoise continued on. Slowly she came around the bend in the road and past the sleeping hare. She was only a few feet from the oak tree when the hare woke up from her nap. Seeing the tortoise so close to finishing, the hare leaped up and tore along the road as if the hounds were after her. But she was too late. Before she could reach the oak tree, the tortoise was already been declared winner by a crowd of cheering bystanders. Slow and steady wins the race. Never give up. I don't care what you're doing. Never give up. This is the donkey and the lapdog. A farmer had a little dog that he kept constantly by his side. The farmer also had a donkey who lived in a warm stable and got plenty of fresh grain and sweet hay. But the donkey was not satisfied with his lot. A slave all day, hauling wood, or pulling the cart to market, the donkey grumbled. And then I'm shut in the stable, while the dog sleeps in the master's lap and eats from his plate. Perhaps he thought if he behaved like a dog, his master would reward him with the same life of ease. That very night the donkey crept out of the stable and into the house where the farmer sat at supper. First I'll frisk about and chase my tail, just like the dog does, thought the donkey, and he danced about the room, flipping up his hooves until the table toppled over and the dishes went flying. Now I'll sit on his lap, said the donkey to himself, and he put his heavy hooves up on the master's chair. Help! Save me from this mad beast! Bellowed the terrified farmer. His servants came rushing, and with shots and blows drove the donkey back to the stable. I suppose I'm a fine donkey, the donkey lamented, but I'll never be a lapdog. What's right for one may be wrong for another. There's bears outside. I really hope all the animals are okay. I'm not going outside, but I really hope all the animals are okay. The wolf in sheep's clothing. A hungry wolf had been stalking a flock of sheep for many days. When he came upon a worn-out sheepskin, delighted, he devilishly planned to outwit the flock's watchful shepherd. The wolf slunk into the fold one night, covered in the sheepskin's disguise. In the dark, the shepherd saw nothing amiss, thought the wolf, and soon as the shepherd goes to bed, I'll eat as many sheep as I please. But it just so happened that the shepherd had a taste for fresh mutton that night. Thinking only of his supper, the shepherd seized hold of the nearest sheep to ready it for slaughter, and found himself holding the wolf. What do you think you're doing in my flock? The astonished man cried, and raised his knife high. Rest assured, this is the last time I'll find you lurking here. Tricks often put the trickster to peril. That's very true. The Lark and Her Children. The lark made her nest in a field of young wheat. By the time her eggs hatched, the wheat had grown straight and tall. All summer long, the wheat ripened and grew golden, while the young birds grew in size and strength. The fledglings were nearly ready to leave the nest when they heard a farmer talking to his sons. The wheat's ripened at last, he said. We'll call our friends and neighbors to help with us with the harvest. The little birds were frightened that their nest might be destroyed, and when their mother returned to the nest that night, they told her what they've overheard. Never fear, my children, the lark replied. We still have some time left. Practice your flying, and make sure your wings are strong. A few days later, the young larks once again heard the farmer talking. That wheat must be harvested at once, he said. We can't wait any longer for help from our friends. Tomorrow we'll set to work ourselves. When the children told the lark what the farmer had said, she answered, Then it's time for us to be gone. For once a man is ready to do his own work, there'll be no more delay. If you want something done, do it yourself. It's very true. The Mice and the Weasels. The mice who lived in a certain wood were in constant fear of the weasels, who hunted them for food. At last the mice held a council and decided to declare war on their enemies. But friends, listen to me, cried one mouse. To be a real army, we will need comrades to lead us. Mice on all sides clamored for the honor, and the bravest were given by vote. And the mice who had been clever enough to suggest that the army needed leaders were made the general. Then the mouse spoke up again. It's only right that the officers should wear uniforms, so no one will mistake us for common soldiers, he suggested. Everyone agreed, and the mice fashioned tall straw helmets for the commanders to wear. The general's helmet was crowned with bright red plums. The mouse general sent a challenge to the weasels, and soon the day of battle came. The mice army hid themselves in the tall grass, planning to ambush their enemies, but the weasels easily spotted the plumes of the general's helmet waving above the grass, and they pounced. Shrieking in terror, the mice ran for their lives. The general fled with the rest, but when he deviated headfirst from the hole, his straw helmet was too big to fit inside. The common soldiers managed to dash to safety, but the general and his commanders were devoured. Don't sacrifice what is practical for the sake of pomp and show. That is very true. What's practical is what's practical, and what's not is really what's not. You have to find out what's practical for your own life and what you want to do with it. And what's good for you, like it said in the last one, might not be good for everybody else. The Boy and the Almonds. A hungry boy eyed a jar of almonds sitting on a kitchen table. Mother, please, can I have some almonds? Oh, mother, please, may I have some nuts? He asked with his mouth watering. Take one handful, but no more, said his mother. It's at last supper time. Greedily the boy grabbed as many almonds as he could hold, but his bulging fist wouldn't fit back through the mouth of the jar, though the boy tugged and twisted until his whole arm ached. He could not get his hand free. My dear, his mother said, if you don't let go of half the nuts you have, you won't be able to eat any. Take a few now, and you may have some more after dinner is over. A little at a time is better than none at all. The Stork and the Cranes. A flock of cranes saw a lone stork nesting in a tree. Come with us, they called as they flew by. We're going to a field where there is tender grain to eat, as much as you can hold. Eagerly the hungry stork fled with the cranes to the field, but before any of the birds had so much as taken a bite, a farmer crept up behind them and threw a heavy net over them all. Oh, please, cried the stork, let me go. I am a stork. You see not a crane like the rest. I don't belong with this flock. You may be innocent, replied the farmer, but you kept company with thieves, and now you'll share their punishment as well. You are judged by the company you keep. That is so true, baby. Let's read that one again. A stork and the cranes. A flock of cranes and a lone stork nesting in a tree. Come with us, they called as they flew by. We're going to a field where there is tender grain to eat, as much as you can hold." Eagerly the hungry stork flew with the cranes to the field, but before any of the birds had so much as taken a bite, the farmer crept up behind them and threw a heavy net over all of them. "Oh, please," cried the stork, "let me go. I'm a stork, you see, not a crane like the rest. I don't belong with this flock." "You may be innocent," replied the farmer, "but you kept company with thieves, and now you'll share the punishment as well. You are judged by the company you keep." They didn't even get a bite of food, and now they're going to be punished. Life isn't fair, baby. Don't try and save everybody, okay? Life isn't fair. Alright, this is going to be tomorrow's. Let's sing some songs. How about Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. He called for his pipe, and he called for his bowl, and he called for his fiddlers three. Every fiddler had a very fine fiddle, and a very fine fiddle had he. Oh, there's none so rare as can compare as King Cole and his fiddlers three. How about the grand old Duke of York had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up, and when they were down, they were down. And when they were halfway up, they were neither up nor down. How about Bocker Toe, good morning. We sing Bocker Toe, we thank you for this life. We sing Bocker Toe each morning. This way we know it will be all right. Not everything's okay yet, but Mama has faith. Alright, everything will eventually be okay, and if it's not okay right now, it'll be okay in the end. I love you. I love you, Karina. I love you so incredibly much. You have no idea how much I love you and how much I miss you. Never wanted to leave your side, not even for a second. You're still so little, and I love you so much. Have a good day, my baby. I love you.